Welcome, and thank you for attending the COVID-19 Summer Food Service Training. My name is Melissa Anderson, and I am the Summer Food Service Program Manager for the North Dakota Department of Public Instruction. This training will include Summer Food Service Program information relevant to school programs operating in the fall of 2020. It will also include USDA waiver information new to this program in 2020 due to COVID-19. This program is meant to provide meals to children in low-income areas over the summer months when school is not in session. However, in March of 2020, schools were allowed to switch from the National School Lunch Program to the Summer Food Service Program in order to provide non-congregate meals during school closures due to COVID-19. And now again in August of 2020, for those children who are back in school in person or distance learning until December 31st of 2020, or until federal funding runs out. Who is eligible to receive meals under the Summer Food Service Program? Children ages 1 through 18 and up to 22 years of age for those children with a mental or physical disability. Adults are not eligible to receive meals under the Summer Food Service Program. However, you may serve adult meals to staff, but those meals are not reimbursable. Staff meals can be provided free and then charged to the general fund, or you can simply charge for those meals. It is up to the district to decide how they want to provide meals to adult staff. On March 16, 2020, Governor Burgum announced that all North Dakota schools would close their doors and start developing distance learning plans as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. Schools were also instructed to continue their meal services to the children in North Dakota. As a result of this pandemic and schools closing across the nation, USDA allowed schools to participate in the Summer Food Service Program. USDA developed and put into place multiple waivers which allowed meals to be served in non-congregate settings and for sites in non-area eligible areas to now be eligible to operate the Summer Food Service Program, along with many other waivers which aided schools in their operations to continue serving meals to the children in their community. Those waivers were extended throughout the summer months and were scheduled to end on August 31st of 2020, when schools started reopening to in-person and distance learning. On August 31st, 2020, USDA announced the extension of those Summer Food Service Program waivers until December 31st of 2020 or until funding allocations were depleted. On September 11th, USDA released some flexibilities to those waivers, which allows schools to retroactively claim meals under the Summer Food Service Program prior to August 31st. If your school started in August, you have the option to claim those meals under NSLP or under the Summer Food Service Program. The current waivers that are in effect until December 31st, 2020 allow schools to participate in the Summer Food Service Program starting on the first day of school in August and ending on December 31st or until federal funding runs out. The second waiver allows schools who are not normally eligible for the Summer Food Service Program to operate the program. All schools are currently eligible to operate the Summer Food Service Program. The third waiver allows parents or guardians to pick up meals to take home to children. The fourth waiver allows schools to leave out a meal component of the Summer Food Service Program meal pattern after it has been approved by the Child Nutrition Office. The fifth and final waiver allows schools to serve non-congregate meals under the summer program. Each of these waivers will be explained during the training. Most schools participated in the Summer Food Service Program last spring when school buildings closed due to COVID. Returning schools and new schools wanting to participate in the Summer Food Service Program this fall have been sent a Microsoft Forms survey to notify them of their approval to operate the program and to collect important information for their operations in August and/or September. New schools have been sent an email with the startup information required to provide meals under the Summer Food Service Program. Because the summer program ends on September 30th, schools currently participating in the Summer Food Program will be asked to complete a program renewal. Please watch for more details and instructions on how sponsors will complete this process. When starting up a Summer Food Service Program, schools have options when providing meals to children. Schools can choose to operate the summer food service program and only provide meals to those children enrolled in their school. This is called a closed enrolled program. Schools wanting to provide meals to their enrolled students and their siblings can choose to operate a restricted open program. Schools could also choose to be an open program and serve openly to the community, children ages 1 to 18 and disabled children up to 22 years of age. At this time, most schools have opted to operate as closed enrolled programs by allowing them to only serve the children enrolled in their school. Because schools are providing learning in person and distance learning, meals may be provided in multiple ways. Congregate feeding allows meals to be served to children in a setting where they eat their meals together in a cafeteria or classroom. Non-congregate feeding allows meals to be provided to children to take home. Schools can provide home-delivered meals, but this is not required. The non-congregate option is a result of the USDA waiver, which allows all schools to provide non-congregate meals under the summer food program. Last spring, schools provided non-congregate meals to children when the schools closed and went strictly to distance learning. This was new to all schools, as non-congregate meals are not the normal way to provide meals under the National School Lunch Program or the Summer Food Service Program. Schools rose to the challenge and began providing non-congregate meals in the form of grab-and-go meals or picked-up meals for both breakfast and lunch. This promoted social distancing and made it safe for children to receive meals during that time. Because meals were pre-packed and didn't allow for children to choose the items or the components they wanted, offer versus serve did not apply. Schools were also allowed to distribute up to 5 days worth of meals at one time. This helped schools cut down on the number of days during the week that they distributed meals. As schools are starting back onto the summer food program this fall, most are offering congregate meals under the program to their children who are at the school participating in in-person learning. Because we have hybrid learning at some schools, which allows for children to distance learn for a part of or all of their school week, schools have the option to provide non-congregate meals for those children who are distance learning. If your district will be providing meals to those distance learning kids, then all distance learners must be offered non-congregate meals. When providing non-congregate meals to children, schools can allow a parent or guardian to pick up the meal on behalf of the child. This is due to the USDA waiver allowing for parent pickup. These were some of the best practices that smaller schools utilized last spring when all meals were served non-congregate style. All of these best practices could be used if your school decides to provide non-congregate meals to your distance learners. Medium to large districts utilize different best practices to ensure the integrity of the program. Because most of them were open sites, they used various ways to identify the children or the parents of the children picking up the meals. Again, any of these best practices can be used if providing non-congregate meals to your distance learners. By signing the Summer Food Service Program Agreement, sponsors agree to adhering to administrative responsibilities that are required under the program. Those responsibilities are completing the annual program renewal in Indy Foods, program training, monitoring program operations, civil rights compliance, program meal reimbursements, preparing for and responding to the administrative desk audits or program reviews by the state agency, record-keeping practices, and overseeing all food service operations. I will now go through each one of these responsibilities in detail. Before new and returning sponsors start their new year, they are required to take the most current annual summer food service training. Because of COVID, all new sponsors were required to take the training when operations began in March of 2020. And now new sponsors are taking this training to meet that annual requirement. Authorized representatives or program staff can use the training to train other staff, including food service staff, on the summer food service requirements. All staff training must be documented on the Summer Food Service Training Certification Form and be submitted to the Child Nutrition Office. Training documentation is then recorded in ND Foods. In order to meet state law requirements, all lead food service workers at each site must complete the initial sanitation and safety training. Once the initial training is complete, a 3-hour refresher is required every 5 years. If you have staff that are in need of this training, please contact our office. In order to ensure that program operations are being conducted in compliance with USDA regulations, sponsors must review themselves by completing the site review form. This form was made available in the new program startup packet for all new sponsors. It was also made available in the email to all of the previous sponsors who participated back in March. This site review must be completed within the first 4 weeks of operation. Allowable meals that are served under the Summer Food Service Program are claimed for reimbursement in the ND Food system. Reimbursement is calculated using a simple meals times rate formula. There is no reimbursement for adult meals. Claims are done monthly and paid on the 10th of each month. Here are the current 2020 Summer Food Service Program reimbursement rates. Most schools are serving meals under the rural-urban self-prep rate category. That means that they prepare their own meals. We have a few schools that are vended. They would fall under the urban vended category. The operating and administrative rates are combined to make the final rate in the calculation. The reimbursement you receive for the meals served in the Summer Food Service Program is used to cover administrative and operating expenses to run your program. Administrative expenses can be any activities related to the planning, organization, and administration of the Summer Food Service Program. All revenues and expenses should be run through the district's school food service account. When operating multiple federal programs, revenues and expenses should be coded differently and by each federal program. Operating expenses can include labor, non-food supplies, food purchases, rent for buildings, and utilities. Sponsors must maintain all documentation for both operating and administrative expenses. There are some expenses that are unallowable and that cannot be charged to the Summer Food Service Program. Some examples of unallowable expenses are costs for serving meals to school staff not involved in the operation of the program, meals served in violation of program requirements, costs of food used outside of the summer program, the cost of spoiled or damaged meals, repayment of overclaims and other federal debt, entertainment, and fundraising costs. Now that we have talked about program expenses, we can discuss program revenue. Program revenue or income must be used to cover program expenses. Sponsors need to keep documentation of all income to the program. The main source of revenue to the program is the meal reimbursement. This is what the claim for reimbursement looks like in ND Foods. All claims are submitted in the ND Food system. Sponsors are notified in their work queue of claims that are ready for submission. Claims are open on the 1st of each month and are paid on the 10th. To complete the claim, start by entering in the average daily attendance, which can be the highest amount of meals you served in one day for either breakfast or lunch. An example, if the most you served on any given day in September was 100 for breakfast and 105 for lunch, then you would enter in 105 in the average daily attendance spot. Next, you will fill in the information specific to the meals served. Let's start with breakfast. Enter in the number of days you served breakfast meals. Then enter in the number of first meals served. If you provided any complete second meals, then those would be entered in the second meals field. This process is then repeated for lunch meals. Once you have entered in all of the information on the claim, you will certify the information by checking the box and then hitting Save. Before submitting, you can click on the View Summary to get a detailed report of the claim. Click on Submit to DPI to submit the claim into our system. How do schools submit meals for August and September? If you started serving NSLP meals in August, those meals can be claimed under the Summer Food Service Program. Meals that were served prior to the waiver extensions released on August 31st can now be claimed under the summer program. If you have already charged families for those meals under NSLP, you may credit or reimburse them for those charges. Schools have the option to also claim those meals served in August or September under NSLP up until the day they start their summer food service program. Each sponsor has one emergency COVID-19 meal site entered into ND Foods. Meal counts for all sites will be combined and claimed under one summer food service site on the September claim, which will be available after October 1st. July summer food service claims were generated in ND Foods, so if you did not operate a summer program in July, please go in and decline the July summer food service program claim. In order to enter in the correct amounts onto a claim for reimbursement, sponsors must track their meals. The approved methods to track meals served under the Summer Food Service Program are the meal count tally forms, your POS system, or you may use a spreadsheet to track meals served. Be sure and count all meals distributed to children. Meals must be tracked separately. If you use your POS system to track meals, please make sure that you change your meal prices to 0 to ensure that families are not charged for summer food meals. Do not change the free, reduced, or paid status of the children in your system. The meal count tally sheet was included in the new sponsor startup packet and is also available on our website. CNFD is required to conduct monitoring of all program operations. New sponsors are required to have a review or desk audit during the first year of operation. Returning sponsors must be audited at least every 3 years. All of the above program categories are included in the audit. If you are a new sponsor or are due for an audit, our office will contact you with specific information and to schedule the desk audit. Record keeping and retention. There are many program documents that are the responsibility of the sponsor to maintain. Records must be kept for 3 years plus the current year. Some of the program documents include meal counting forms, production records, training documentation, the racial ethnic data collection record, and the site review form. Another responsibility of the sponsor is to ensure that procurement rules are followed when purchasing supplies and food with federal funds. All purchases must be competitive and offer free and open competition. There are 3 types of procurement methods: a micro purchase, informal procurement for small purchases, and formal procurement. I will briefly go through each method. Micro purchase means a purchase of products or services where the total amount does not exceed $10,000 per transaction. Purchases must be distributed equitably among qualified suppliers with reasonable prices. You can identify if a price is reasonable by comparing prices from previous purchases, have personal knowledge of the item being purchased, or comparing prices to similar items being purchased. For purchases over $10,000, sponsors can use the informal procurement process, commonly referred to as procurement under the small purchase threshold or simplified acquisitions. Although this method is permitted when the amount of a purchase falls at or below the most restrictive small purchase threshold, which is $50,000 in North Dakota. Schools could also choose to use the formal procurement method rather than the informal procurement method for these types of purchases. The following steps are typically involved in an informal procurement. Develop specifications in writing, describe the goods or services that are needed, any due dates or other requirements. Identify sources that are eligible, able, and willing to provide products. Contact at least 3 sources. Evaluate quotes in response to your written specifications. Determine most responsive and the responsible bidder at lowest price. Keep procurement documentation. For purchases that are greater than $50,000, schools must follow the formal procurement method. There are 2 methods under the formal procurement that are available to schools: competitive sealed bid or invitation for bid, and the competitive proposal or request for proposal. A competitive sealed bid or invitation for bid is a formal type of procurement where sealed bids are publicly advertised and result in a firm fixed price contract. Price is the determining factor. Choose the vendor with the lowest price that meets the specifications. A competitive proposal or request for proposal is another formal type of procurement where price is a factor, but it can be negotiated. Price should be the primary factor, for example, not necessarily 51%. It just must be the greatest number of all factors, so it could be 25% if everything else listed in the scoring is lower. The final responsibility of the sponsor is to adhere to civil rights requirements. It is very important that schools serve meals to all children without discrimination and allow equal access to meals by providing the same meal and the same service to each child. I will go through the required components of the civil rights requirements. The first component is the collection and use of data. Sponsors must use the racial ethnic data collection form to determine the number of potential and actual beneficiaries. Report numbers from each site on this form. This form was included in the startup packet and once completed must be kept with your program records. Make sure to inform potential beneficiaries of the program, including its location and hours of operation. This can be done through a public release. NDDPI sends out a statewide public release at the beginning of each program year to inform all North Dakota residents of the existence of this program. The second component ensures that your participants have access to the non-discrimination statement and poster. Display the And Justice for All poster in an area where the children and/or families can clearly see it. Also make sure to include the non-discrimination statement on all outreach materials. The exact language is provided on the next slide and on the And Justice for All poster. If you would like an electronic version of this statement to use on printed materials or on web-based applications, please contact our office. The third component of civil rights is the complaint procedure. There is a process to follow when accepting a civil rights complaint from a client. The person alleging the complaint must be provided with the non-discrimination statement and the procedure to submit a complaint. Instructions on how to file a complaint are located on the And Justice for All poster. The complaint alleging discrimination must be made within 180 days of the event, and complaint should be forwarded to the state agency or directly to USDA using the address in the non-discrimination statement. The fourth and fifth components are about compliance. Sponsors must ensure that they comply with all civil rights requirements under the summer program. The state agency reviews civil rights as part of the summer review or desk audit. When conducting a review of its own program operations, the school must check for civil rights compliance when doing the on-site reviews that are required within the first 4 weeks of operation. Sponsors must resolve any civil rights issues and be responsive to all corrective action, including civil rights. The sixth component outlines requirements for language assistance. Forms are available in different languages, so please contact the state agency to obtain these documents. If you need an interpreter to explain the program to parents and one isn't available locally, please contact the state agency. The seventh component is conflict resolution. When there is a conflict regarding civil rights, sponsors must assess the nature of the problem and take appropriate steps to notify all pertinent parties that there is a problem and work together to produce a solution. Follow up on all conflict to ensure that all parties agree with the solution presented. The final component of civil rights is customer service. When a parent approaches you regarding a special dietary need or any civil rights issue, treat them with respect and be helpful. All participants must be treated in the same manner. Be proactive and accommodating. Some examples of accommodating a person with disabilities include meeting the special dietary needs, providing special eating utensils, and/or allowing equal access to all service to all participants. In the next section of the training, I will be discussing all of the food service requirements, including meal pattern options, credible foods, meal types, USDA foods for summer food, and production records. This is the traditional meal pattern requirements for breakfast, lunch, and snack under the Summer Food Service Program. Breakfast includes 3 components, lunch includes 4 components, and snack you have 4 options, but you must choose between 2 components to be a reimbursable meal. Only 2 meal types per day may be claimed under the Summer Food Service Program. USDA foods for NSLP may be used when preparing these meals. Some items within a component are creditable and some are not. Creditable milk items must be fresh, fluid, and pasteurized. As you can see, there are many creditable items under the milk component. There are also several non-creditable items that cannot be used as the milk component of any of the meals served under the Summer Food Service Program. Some tips to follow when providing milk. At breakfast and snack, milk can be used on cereal or as a beverage or both. At lunch or supper, milk must be served as the beverage. Schools that choose to follow the NSLP meal pattern instead of the Summer Food Service meal pattern while operating summer food must follow the regulation requirements for types of milk allowed in those programs. Creditable items under the fruit and vegetable component include fresh fruit and vegetables, full-strength fruit or vegetable juice. Juice drinks with at least 50% strength juice must be served in a larger portion size to equal full strength. Dried beans and dried peas, however, these may also be credited as meat alternates, but not as both components in the same meal. Non-creditable items include all of the items listed, like ketchup and potato chips, just to name a few. Tips for providing fruit and vegetables include using 2 or more servings of different vegetables and/or fruits for lunch and supper. The minimum serving size is 1/8 cup to credit towards the fruit vegetable requirement. Try to include various forms of fruits and vegetables such as raw or cooked, fresh, frozen, canned in juices, or dried. Do not serve 2 forms of the same fruit or vegetable in the same meal. Combination fruit and vegetables are counted as 1 fruit vegetable. Small amounts of onions, ketchup, or other condiments may be added for flavor or garnish as other foods, but these do not count towards the fruit vegetable requirement. Full-strength pasteurized 100% juice may be served at lunch or supper, but no more than 1/2 of the fruit vegetable requirement, which is 3/8 of a cup, can be met by serving juice. Juice drinks with at least 50% strength juice are permitted, but not recommended, because of the larger volume needed to meet the equivalent amount of full-strength juice. Juice cannot be served when milk is the only other snack component. Serving a variety of vegetables and fruit will ensure that children are getting a nutritionally well-balanced meal. Creditable grains and breads include a variety of items. Please be mindful of the serving size options and the equivalent when creating your meal to meet the meal pattern requirements for grains. Items that are not creditable as grains and breads include potatoes and corn, as those are creditable as vegetables, canned hominy, nut or seed meals and flours, tapioca, ice cream cones, and potato chips. Sweet snacks or breakfast items should not be served more than 2 times per week. Sweet grain or bread items are not allowed for lunch. Refer to the grain and bread chart in the USDA Food Buying Guide for allowable grains and breads items and minimum serving sizes. Finally, the meat alternate category. Creditable items in the meat alternate category include the following items. Please be aware that nuts and seeds can only contribute to 50% of the serving requirement. Processed meat products like chicken nuggets, chicken patties, and pizza must have a child nutrition label or a product formulation statement in order to determine if the product meets the requirements. There are also many foods that are not creditable as a meat alternate. If there is ever a question regarding the creditability of a food, please contact our office. If you need help deciding what items are creditable and what items should be purchased for your summer food service program, you can use the food buying guide. This will help determine what quantities of creditable foods to be purchased for your program. If you are a school who has operated NSLP before, then you should already have one in your kitchen. If not, you can obtain a copy of the guide by contacting our office or visiting our website. When purchasing products for your summer food service program, please know that not all products sold by your distributor are CN labeled products. All convenience products like chicken nuggets, prepackaged meals, pre-cooked beef patties, bulk macaroni and cheese must contain a CN label to determine whether or not it fulfills the meal pattern requirements. If you have a product in question, please contact our office for guidance. I will now touch briefly on each of the meal types and break down the meal pattern requirements. I will also offer some suggestions for menus in your summer food service program. The breakfast meal pattern includes only 3 components with the option of utilizing a meat alternate as one of the components. Examples of menus for breakfast include the following options. A cold cereal can be easy to offer, but consider offering a hot breakfast in order to increase meal participation. This is the lunch and supper meal pattern. It contains 4 components. A 2-ounce meat alternate serving is required. This could be an item on its own, like an 8-ounce serving of yogurt or 1 large egg, or it can be included in a prepared soup or hot dish. However, each serving provided to a child must include the full 2-ounce serving of the meat alternate. 1 serving of grain or bread is required. Since a serving can vary depending upon the item, refer to the grain and bread chart in the USDA food buying guide for allowable grain and bread items and the minimum serving sizes. Just like in the breakfast meal pattern, 1 cup of fluid milk is required. The final component is the fruit and vegetable component. It actually contains 2 separate items. This component requires 2 servings of a fruit and or vegetable, totaling 3/4 of a cup. This must be 2 separate items. And finally, the snack meal pattern. This meal pattern contains 4 components with the option of offering only 2. Just like the breakfast and lunch meal pattern, 1 cup of fluid milk is included, as well as a serving of grain or bread, a meat alternate, and a fruit or vegetable. Schools cannot offer 2 liquids, for example, an apple juice and a milk for a reimbursable snack. And sweet snacks are also limited to twice per week. Similar to the NSLP program, the summer food program allows meals to be served utilizing offer versus serve. This slide shows a side-by-side comparison of the traditional meal pattern and the meal pattern utilizing offer versus serve. For breakfast, 4 items must be offered and only 3 items need to be taken by the child for it to be a reimbursable meal. All 4 components must be provided under offer versus serve for lunch, but the child only needs to take 3 components. If the child chooses the fruit and vegetable component, they may take 1 of the servings or both. For any questions regarding offer versus serve, please contact our office. The minimum amount of each type of food must be offered in order for the meal to count as a reimbursable meal. Older children may receive larger portions, especially those over 12. This is not a requirement, but is something to consider when looking at cost factors. When developing your menus, try to ensure that meals meet the nutritional needs of the child and that the meals don't exceed a budget meal cost. Currently, USDA is allowing a waiver for the summer food service meal pattern. This allows schools to request a waiver to leave out a required component of the meal pattern. Reasons for needing this waiver may include the inability to get certain items from their distributor or delayed delivery of milk due to weather or COVID-19. Requests must be submitted to dpi.cnfd@nd.gov. The request should be completed, submitted, and approved prior to the meal service. However, it can be the same day of the meal service. Requests will be approved or denied the same day they are submitted by the school. When there is a need to substitute an item due to a special dietary need, it must meet the following requirements. A disability which restricts diet. Substitutions must be made for children who are considered disabled and require special dietary modifications. A needs statement detailing the condition. Foods to avoid. Appropriate substitutions is required. Substitutions may also be made for those who are not disabled but who are unable to consume regular meals because of a medical or other dietary need. In those cases, a medical statement is required. What should your food service staff know about special dietary needs meal substitutions? When the medical condition or allergy is severe or life-threatening. The information submitted to the school should include the name of the child, the condition, the foods to avoid, and the appropriate substitutions. Medical statements are valid for 1 year. For additional information on dietary needs, please contact our office. When creating menus and preparing meals, it is very important to follow the meal pattern. If any meals are found during a program review or program desk audit to not meet the meal pattern requirements, the reimbursement may be disallowed. Meals that are served to adults or that are not served should not be counted as a reimbursable meal. Meals that are spoiled are also not reimbursable. When applying for the Summer Food Service Program, schools indicate the estimated number of meals or approved level of meals that they will serve on the site application. When reviewing claims before a payment is made to schools, state staff make sure that meals do not exceed that approved level. If they exceed the approved level, they may be disallowed. If during your program operations, your estimated number of meals or approved level of meals changes, please call the state agency and we will update your approved level. Other types of meals that are not reimbursable are meals that are not served as a complete unit. But if you are utilizing offer versus serve, that is taken into consideration when reviewing production records as part of the desk audit or when observing a meal service during an on-site program review. If a school indicates that they are following the Summer Food Service meal pattern on the site application, but is then found to be using the NSLP meal pattern during a review, those meals may also be disallowed. Meals documented for a site that is not approved in any foods may not be reimbursable. If you change sites or site information for any reason, please notify our office. All site changes need to be reviewed and approved by our office before you will be able to claim meals served at that site. Schools may claim second meals, however, they are only reimbursed up to 2% of the total first meal served. For example, if the total number of first meals served is 100 and 100 second meals are entered onto the claim for reimbursement, ND Foods will only reimburse up to 2% of the total first meal served. In this particular example, only 2 of the second meals would be reimbursable. In order to keep a record of each meal prepared and served, and to ensure that each meal meets the meal pattern, food service staff must fill out production records. Schools may choose to complete the SFSP production record template or continue to use the NSLP production record template. However, if a school is using the National School Lunch Program meal pattern to provide meals under the Summer Food Service Program, then the NSLP production record should be used. Production records are not the same as menus. Menus explain what is being served. Production records document the food items and the amount of foods prepared, along with their serving size. They are also used to help fulfill the meal pattern requirements. They must be maintained daily for all meals claimed for reimbursement. This is an example of a production record for a lunch meal. The school is serving taco in a bag with apple slices, pudding, and a milk. Each component is listed. 1% milk is offered in 8-ounce servings, which meets the meal pattern requirement. And since they are serving 50 kids, they prepare 50 cartons of milk. In order to provide each of the 50 children with a 2-ounce serving of a meat alternate, food service staff must take the 2 ounces times 50 to get the total ounces or pounds needed. In this case, 7 pounds of hamburger is needed to fulfill that requirement. A whole grain tortilla chips are offered in a 2-ounce bag. That meets the grain requirement. The fruit and vegetable component consists of a 1/2 cup of apple slices and a 1/4 cup of shredded lettuce. This combination equals a full 3/4 cup, meeting the meal pattern requirement. As you can see, each component is listed and multiplied out to determine how much food to prepare to ensure that each child will get the required amount. A pudding cup is also listed, but it is listed under the other category as it is not a required component to the meal. And finally, USDA foods for the Summer Food Service Program. Because schools are currently operating SFSP in place of the National School Lunch Program, USDA is allowing schools to continue to utilize their USDA foods and entitlement to use when serving meals under the Summer Food Program. Schools will continue to receive their monthly food surveys to complete and can also use their DoD fresh fruits and vegetable entitlement to purchase fresh fruits and vegetables through favors. Thank you for participating today and for working so hard to ensure that North Dakota kids get the meals they need. For questions regarding any of our programs, please contact our office using the contact information listed below. Thank you.